Welcome to News 9 Live, and you are watching On Point with me. Before I introduce you to today's On Points, let us take a look at the headlines. Pakistan's former intelligence chief Faiz Hamid Faiz taken into military custody, court-martial initiated. Bangladesh Interim Government reacts to Hasina's stay in India, says bilateral relations with India won't be impacted because of one individual. War clouds over West Asia. Israel braces for attack from Iran, suspends travel abroad for its service personnel. US deploys nuclear-powered guided missile submarine to the region. Russian President Putin responds to Ukrainian incursion of Kursk region, says Ukraine is trying to stop Moscow's offensive in Donbass, vows to retaliate. Palestinian Authority President Muhammad Abbas arrived in Moscow for an official visit, Putin to hold talks tomorrow. Doctors across India goes on a strike protesting against the sexual assault and murder of 31-year-old postgraduate trainee on duty at Kolkata's Arjikar Medical College. Congress slams the government over the Hindenburg research allegation against SEBI chairperson Madhabi Bush, reiterates JPC probe. IIT Madras and the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru retain top positions in the National Institute Ranking Framework. AIMS Delhi and JNU are the other top universities in the list released by the Ministry of Education. A star-studded closing ceremony brings an end to the Olympic Games in Paris. Welcome back. In this edition of On Point, I have an exclusive for you with Syeda Rizwana Hasan, advisor to the Chief Executive of Bangladesh, Muhammad Yunus. Thank you so much, madam, for making time for News 9 Live. And let me begin this interview by asking you, what is the biggest challenge for the interim government?
The biggest challenge for the interim government is to bring in stability in all sectors, because we were under the ruling of one particular party for about 16 years, and there were flawed elections through which they came to power. To continue in power, they have controlled all the institutions in a way that the institutional chain of command has been seriously disrupted. So our effort will be to make the institutions public-oriented, bring them outside the influence of any given party, and the call is to reform the system so that the institutions work as Bangladeshi institutions and not as institutions belonging to any political party. So this is the major challenge for us, bringing in good governance, stability, and creating responsive, people-oriented institutions.
Can we say, madam, that the government now is in control in Bangladesh?
I didn't hear you. Can you repeat
Can
that?
we say that the government is in control of the situation in Bangladesh?
The government is there. We spent almost 2.5 days without having a declared cabinet taking over the responsibility. I'm not saying taking over power. I'm saying taking over the responsibility. The government is gradually establishing its control in most of the sectors that needed urgent intervention. I would say in the finance and in law and order, things have been brought under control.
How will the new government restore the economy?
That is a major challenge. We have this, today was our second day in office. So the finance minister, the finance advisor had to reshuffle the entire Bangladesh bank because all the top positions, they resigned. So we had to find people in 24 hours, within 24 hours to fill in the vacancies. We had to ensure that the supplies of essentials are not disrupted in any way. Now we will have to work on bringing in discipline in the banking sector, because if you have been noticing the turn of events in Bangladesh, some of the banks have actually reached the point of bankruptcy. There was global recession that is also a factor, but the mal-governance of the banks, the corruption, the money laundering, these were all there and were being reported. So this will be a huge task. I cannot answer the how question right now at the moment, but there are other countries who have gone through similar experiences before. It is not impossible to bring in reforms. So they are thinking about reform agenda. They are thinking about how fast we can actually bring in the reforms in the system. So the laws were there. The institutions were there. The institutions were all brought under partisan control. That we are getting rid of. But the laws were not being implemented or were rather being flouted. So we have to bring in our control over that.
You spoke about reforms. What's on the top of the agenda when you speak of reform? What are the first two most important reforms required?
First two, only two. I think it's
three?
The economic sector, law and order, and justice system.
Justice system. When we talk about law and order, the Bangladesh faced a peculiar situation of police personnel abandoning police posts. Has that improved?
The police yesterday has withdrawn their work abstention, and today they have joined duties. But in the revolution period, some of the police stations have been set to fire, their arms taken. Most importantly, there was a distance between the students and the police. So that's through a series of discussion in the last 2 days has been minimized, because the police force that is out there on the road and doing the work are not the ones who are doing it according to their own will. They are being told to do it. They are instructed to do it. So we are trying to find out only the ones who are guilty of giving the command, not the general police force. I think this message has been conveyed clearly to the police, and they have come back to duty, but we still don't have all the infrastructure ready that we had before for them to function in a normal way.
What is the government of Dr. Yunus doing to protect the minorities? Hindus, Hindu temples, they were attacked, and they had nothing to do with the larger core agendas of the students.
The students who protested, they also had students from the Hindu community. So this is not a Muslim student-led movement. It was a movement that had students from Hindu community, Christian community, indigenous people. What has happened is, after any change in power in Bangladesh, you see some disturbances, because all our governments have run the country in a very partisan manner where opposition were always silenced. So all the attacks that you see on the religious temples and on the Hindus, these are not necessarily all because of religion. There are political tensions, there are social tensions, and part of it is religious tension. We have to take it in a very sensitive way, because the support base for the Muslims in this society is there, but the Hindus being minority, the support system is not that wide. And we were dealing with this attack at a time when we did not have the police on the field. So bringing the situation under control was becoming extra difficult. So we have listed the incidents, and we are going to the chief advisor is going to have a discussion with the leaders of the Hindu community and their Hindu and other minority communities, and also with their representative bodies. We are against any form of violence. We are not in a denial mood at all, but all that is happening is not communal. It's happening, but all that is happening is not communal.
If it is not communal, madam, then why Ahmadiyyas and Hindus got targeted?
It's not only the Ahmadiyyas and Hindus who got targeted. You go to the districts where these attacks took place. Muslims were also attacked. So any community that was supporting the government, that was considered the voter bank of the government, that took advantage for the government, got attacked. Of course, there are vested interest groups who target the properties of these minority communities. That has also happened. But in a large number of cases, it was more political and social tension. If you can name of one district where only the Hindus were attacked and the Muslims were not attacked, then you have a point there. But that is not the case. In all the 32 districts where the Hindus were attacked, where the Ahmadiyyas were attacked, or the indigenous community was attacked, Muslims were also attacked.
Madam, there's a wider global sentiment that, yes, the struggle was popular, students were spontaneously organized, but there is a chance that radical elements may take over the dissent. How do you look at it?
I don't feel very nervous about it because I know my country. This has been said about Bangladesh for how many years? I mean, in the whole of your journalist career, I'm sure you have heard the same thing coming up time and again. I haven't really seen any election, any proper election in which the religious fundamentalists got more than 3 to 5% vote. So there is no reason as to why it would change overnight. And I must tell you one thing, that how organized the religious forces become does not depend only on what happens here in Bangladesh. If you see Babri Mosque being broken in India, if you see Muslims not being protected in India, that also has an impact here. Fortunately, that has not been the case here in Bangladesh. So to answer your question, I don't see, when the mainstream politics fails, you having this Indian background would probably know, then the religious forces get organized, but they have to get the general people's support. That is surely missing here in Bangladesh. They have their own vote bank, but that is not actually expanding or increasing.
I'm not here to defend the Indian experience of communalism, but there is a difference. India is a secular country, and it is a different debate altogether how events in different parts of the country impact other countries. But what assurance, before I go to other questions of environment, what assurance does your government give to Hindus and minorities that this is going to come to an end?
What the message that has been gone there to the Hindus is, first, in all other political government, no, this is not happening. We are not saying that. That's number one. We have taken note of things that are happening. We have recorded all the incidents. We have now instructed all the police to take extra care. We have instructed the army also to take extra care. And we have told them that if anyone who is identified involved there will be punished, and will be punished in a manner that these incidences do not take place ever in Bangladesh. I mean, this is a common thing that happens after every election. You see supporters of one party attacking supporters of the other party. That must end. Okay. And we are going to sit. The chief advisor was supposed to sit with the leaders today, but for some reason it got delayed. It's happening tomorrow.
Madam, coming back to the issue of economy, because the Bangladesh is a major export of garments. Do you think that the global brands which are rethinking supply chains of rediversification will stick to Bangladesh after this?
I think they will, because for them to do business in Bangladesh also has its own economics. The cheap labor that they get in Bangladesh, that's not very easy to get in any part of the world. So I think they'll stick to Bangladesh because the Bangladesh garment industry is pretty organized and they have good communication, coordination with their buyers, and there is a confidence base. This is something that the garment owners haven't done. It is a national political thing. So if we can bring situation under control, say within next 2 days, I don't think it will be much of a problem.
Madam, when will students go back to universities? Because that's where they belong, universities, not manning police stations, not manning traffic lights. I think the deal is done. The government has changed. A new interim government is in place, but students haven't gone back to their daily routine.
They haven't gone back to the university because of the fact that the old VCs and proctors who failed to protect them when the student wing of the party in power was attacking them, that reality remained there till yesterday. They have now resigned. One thing I have to tell here, that this is a advisory panel, which is like a cabinet, where we have got 2 members from the agitating, the protesting students. So they are very clear that the university study environment has to be conducive. There will be no party politics. There will be no party cadre who will be staying in the hostels, and the VCs and proctors will be appointed afresh, and they will have to know that in case there is an attack on the students, the VC and proctor and the teachers will be protecting them. It's not only a demand from the students, it's also a demand from a large section of the teachers who thus far, were helpless. They could not protect their students because police and the other forces will be siding with the goons of the party in power. So that situation, once it changes, that may take another few weeks, but they'll be back to their universities, and it will be a very different university for them.
How well is your preparation going for holding elections in terms of logistics, organizing everything?
Nobody in Bangladesh is talking about election at the moment.
Really?
We want a credible and fair election. Yes, people are talking about reform. If you see the online polls that are taking place, if you read the newspapers, we look forward to an election, but we have to march towards the election to develop the system in a way so that the election commission is reformed, its laws are enabling enough to avoid political pressure. So people of Bangladesh really want to cast their vote, because after 2009, most people haven't casted their vote. The students who were on the street, they were like 20, 25, 23, 28. They could never cast their vote. So that aspiration, that intention is there. But at the moment, this is not the priority. The priority at the moment is reform and work for democracy. Once all the systems are in place, we'll definitely hold election as early as possible.
2 quick questions, I know I'm asking this at a point when, the law and order is not in place in Bangladesh, but Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable country in South Asia when it comes to climate change, madam.
Yeah.
One of the most vulnerable country. I don't know whether it's in the scope of the interim government or not, whether the new government after the elections will do it. Your thoughts?
The interim government will be running like a regular government, but we'll be dealing with these extra challenges of governance. Climate change is a major issue, and not that we can contain it because it's a global phenomenon. It's acts of some other countries that's impacting us, but we can redesign our development, give a different narrative for our development so that we don't aggravate the situation. We have to really think of massive adaptation. We are already getting salinity. The weather is changing. We had the most hot month of April in the last 50 years. So we are confronted with all these challenges. We have limited resources to deal with this, but we are also relying on local-led innovation. At the same time, we are asking the international community to support us in adaptation, and asking the international community to change their path of carbon-intensive development.
And last question to you, madam. The protest had acquired an anti-India tinge. How is your interim government and Dr. Yunus trying to reaffirm and restore what the India-Bangladesh relationships were and how they're supposed to function in future? Because both of them are neighbors.
The one thing that I really liked about the student movement that eventually turned into a revolution is they never said a single thing against India. What you have seen in Maldives, you will not be able to show anything of that sort coming out from the students' movement. Going back to your question, it is not for Dr. Yunus to answer only about how he is going to restore. It is also on the Indian government to think about how it is going to restore. The Indian government will have to think about what has worked in Bangladesh and what has not worked in Bangladesh. And it is not the same relationship that will be restored. It will definitely be a very friendly, supportive, cooperative relationship. But there were mistakes that were done that both parties will have to avoid this time. And when it comes to India, remember, it's not only one government talking to the other government. It's also people of one country talking to the people of another country. And I think there the tension is much less. At the government level, they have to work on the mistakes.
I think both. I think it has to be a mutual. I think it has to be mutual, and I think it has to be done pretty quickly.
Transparent also. And it
Pardon
has to
me?
be transparent also.
It has to be transparent also. At the end of this interview on Point, I can only say good luck, and I hope peace and normalcy return to the streets of Bangladesh. Thank you so much for speaking to us on News 9 Live. So this was advisor to the Dr. Muhammad Yunus, Syeda Rizwana Hasan, speaking to us on multiple points in this edition of On Point. But don't go away. Once I'm back, we'll talk about what has happened in Bangladesh in last 72 hours. But after a short break.